Welcome back to a new season of the Educator Wellness Revolution podcast. We are joined by Leslie Edwards today, who we are so excited to talk to about teaming, about school design, about so many amazing topics we think is a great way to start our new season and our school year. And we're also delighted to be joined by co-host Dominique Moore, Empower Ed's new community organizer, who will be joining us today. And you'll see her many times coming on the podcast too. So Dominique, I'll turn it over to you.
I can't talk while I'm on mute. Good morning, Empower Ed family. How are you all? Good morning, Scott. Good morning, Miss Leslie. Thank you for joining. As Scott said, welcome to a new season of the Educator Podcast. All right. So, Miss Leslie, thank you for joining us today. As we start this new season, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career in education and what you love about teaching.
I love it. First, just thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you, Scott. And Dominique, please don't call me Ms. Leslie. You're 18. But I'm just grateful for Empower Ed for this opportunity. So thank you. Really looking forward to just delving into all of this good stuff today. I started my career 22 years ago, so back in '03. And no one told me that because I finished school early, I finished college early, that starting to teach immediately after winter break would not be the most ideal start.
Mm.
Just imagine this 22-year-old excited. I was in Prince George's County at the time, 36 freshman students who had a substitute for the first half of the year and returned from winter break and saw me. And so that was a rough start, as you can imagine, those first months. But I've been with it ever since because I really feel like a lot of my learning happened in those initial months and years as a teacher. So I've been a classroom teacher, taught English, transitioned after about 7 years to my national board certification and really got eager to get into leadership. And so I became a master educator with DC Public Schools, a role that I absolutely loved and really was like fertile ground to help me build my capacity, not only as educator, but as a leader. I did that for about 7 years, transitioned into a school because I thought I'd been traveling to different schools as a master educator, supporting them with literacy. But how would it feel to be in a school home where I could actually apply these strategies in a space where I could see it grow, kind of be in the trenches with the educator team? And so that's what I did. And so I did that role for several years as an assistant principal. Shout out to Ron Brown College Preparatory High School. I was the founding assistant principal there and just really eager to scale the work and have a greater impact on DC. And so I transitioned into district leadership as the director of leadership development. Also another role that helped me to really grow and build my capacity as a leader, and then also really think about innovative approaches of how to address the needs at different school communities in a way that I had not done before. And so I did that for several years. And as you can kind of get the theme here, I generally get kind of hungry and antsy and want to do more. And I felt like, let me expand my reach outside of DC Public Schools, which I still consider home. But I started working with charter schools across DC as well. And so my work as a consultant, I was able to partner with organizations such as City Bridge Education, City Tutor DC, which is now City Schools Collaborative. And so just a lot of great work with education in different, realms, but just grateful for the school improvement work that I'm really leaning into.
We like that hunger to keep taking on the next thing. And we know that one of the things you have been taking on, as you started to mention there, is like just thinking about how schools are designed, because we've been designing schools more or less the same way for generations. And I think a lot of us who have been in the classroom and been in and around schools, we're always in that position and kind of feeling the effect of a design that's not really built for the moment in many ways. And we're feeling that in our positions. And then we get that hunger, right? Like, what do we do about this? How do we step into a new role and try to
Yeah.
affect some change to design things a little bit differently? So let's just start with like, why does it need to change, and what would work better?
Yeah, Scott. I mean, you just named it, right? That traditional model, it just really isn't working anymore. It was really based on more of an industrial economy. We know that our economy today is really evolving and it's evolving rapidly. And so that one size fits all approach that we've been really based on, it doesn't work, right? When I think of my schooling experience 40 plus years ago, it generally still looks the same, right? We have
Yeah.
students, scholars, sitting still for long periods of time, giving a whole bunch of content, asked to regurgitate that, and oftentimes in tasks that don't apply to the real world. Like that's how I was taught. That's how our kids are taught. I have two amazing kids. I have a student who's going into 10th grade, and my son is going into 8th grade. And so even when I visit their classrooms, and I get to experience and let's look at some of their work, it looks very much the same. And so unfortunately, we are not changing at the same pace in which the world is changing. And the reality is, like, those systemically inequitable structures, they are products of design, right? Like it was designed that way. And so that means it can be redesigned. And so that's the work I lean into. You know, Dominique, you asked me why I love teaching. I love teaching because it's such a reciprocal, dynamic process that really is like discovery on both ends. You know, I don't say teaching without learning because it's together. It's just back and forth. Hopefully the teacher's rediscovering how he or she could engage students in the content. Students are discovering how it could be applied, what it means, asking questions. Like that back and forth, that reciprocal nature of teaching is what I love about it. But when you're in a structure and in a system that doesn't promote that level of curiosity, it really has that negative impact, not only on the students, but on the adults and the educator community. So that I would say that is why it needs to change, right? We know it's not working. And not only us as like folks, you know, connected to the work, but the folks doing the work aren't satisfied with the experience, right? We know that teacher dissatisfaction has gone up leaps and bounds over the past several years, but even the past few decades, teachers are saying, you know, this is actually not for me. The pool is shallow.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with a friend at GW recently, and they were talking about some of the staff cuts that are happening because there's just not enough students enrolling in the course material in the education program. That's just heartbreaking, right? I mean, the reality is folks are not seeing education as a career that's for the future, that's equity forward, and that's not what we want. So for those of us who are connected to the work, as well as those doing the work, the system's not working, and we definitely can do better and should do better.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. And it's interesting to hear you got your start fresh out of college, much like myself, in Prince George's County, much like myself, but found our way into the district. As a native Washingtonian, DC is very much home for me. And I carry the sentiment with you as well that we are just not satisfied with the way the educational system is structured right now. And I think that it is very cynical and kind of hypocritical that we urge teachers to differentiate instruction and to do tiered level teaching, but the system at the top doesn't reflect that. So, as a cornerstone of school design, as it relates to the way teachers and students work together, how can teachers work together to serve students? What works better?
Yeah. That's my work, right? That is my passion work that I'm into now. I serve as a consultant. I mentioned a few of the organizations earlier that I get to work with. So like shout out again, you know, to City Tutor, formerly City Tutor DC, now City Schools Collaborative. Center for High School Success is also another of the organizations. And so working with those organizations, what I've been able to really lean into is how can we make this work sustainable and more effective, right? We want to make sure that educators are not really working hard, but not seeing the results. And so we're doing something wrong. We need to shift that. And we know, you know, the old adage says, you know, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go
Go
together.
together.
And so our hope is to really reinforce that village, that team approach with elevating the importance of the adult in the space. You know, I always say educators, even school district leaders, don't get a badge for saying how much they love and advocate for kids. Like that's the basis, that's the entry point. You're an educator, you should care about kids.
Yeah.
That's the basis. Do you like adults? Are you an adult who prioritizes the needs of adults? Do you believe in whole adult learning experiences? And so it's like when you shift that paradigm, folks get more quiet, right? The heads don't nod as much in the room. Often when I'm facilitating PD and I ask a lot of the adults in the space about how they feel about their colleagues, it's like you get the murmurs and they're like, yeah, that's why I miss the classroom. I'd rather be with the kids. But that is why the system is really broken, because we've created a system that really champions students only, and we want to make sure that the school community is seen with key stakeholders that are the adults, the educators, the leaders, and the families of those students.
Mhm.
And so working together is how we get that done. Again, my work is like that's passion work that I'm doing now as a consultant, working with schools and helping them see that team-based learning, team-based models are a lever not only for equity, but a lever for school improvement.
Yeah, I mean that that shift in the paradigm of thinking that you just described, I don't can't think of another one that could be more important to changing, I think, how schools, right, the results that we're getting from schools. Because I do think it's been set up to be the exact opposite of the way you describe it. What's been set up is that like if you are choosing to care about adults, then you're choosing adults over choosing children. And there's this kind of setup between like students first or adult needs, when it
Yeah.
is actually that like the baseline, as you said, is that we should all care about kids. If you don't care about kids, if you don't
Right.
think we're putting the needs of students first, then like, what are you doing? This is the wrong business for you. The question is actually like, do you understand the connection between the work we do with adults and serving the students, right? Like, do you
Right.
understand how to do the work with adults so that we serve the students better? And I think that's something we've been trying to shift in conversations we've had around educator well-being, around flexible scheduling, around other things, which is that like if you really care about the success of the students, we have to figure out how to work better together as adults, um, and also take care of ourselves as adults so that we can actually pour into the students the way
Yeah.
we intend to. So you've been doing all this work around teaming. And I'm
Yes.
just curious, like, what have been your big aha moments, or what have you really learned about how you help teachers work together differently? And then what has been really challenging about helping them do that?
Yeah, yeah. I said it was passion work earlier, but it doesn't make it easy work, right? When it's passion work. Getting adults to work together is also, a challenge. I would say one of my biggest ahas was very early on that putting people together in a team and just pushing them together does not make a team, right?
Mm.
Like it's not enough to say, all right, here we go. You all wanted to work together, go at it, because of what that traditional system has been. The mindsets have aligned to what the traditional system has been. So folks oftentimes don't know how to work together as adults. They may not know how to express their needs or even elevate their strengths that they want to add to the team. So that one of the initial aha moments was around, okay, what are the systems and structures and those enabling conditions that I want to help teams feel empowered to, institute to help this team run smoothly, efficiently, to help voices be at the table for the decisions that are made on this team. But that was a shift, right? So I would say definitely a major aha moment. And then the reality is that change leadership is challenging, right? So that was just one of those initial aha moments around how can we get leaders at various levels of leadership to understand that this matters and to give this process as much grace, as much resources, as much strategy as we would do any other initiative. And so oftentimes we find that if it's a student-centered initiative, folks are excited about it and are more willing to kind of give the grace for the bumps. But when it's adult facing and there's shifts that need to happen, oftentimes it's quickly abandoned. And so those aha moments was like, how can I build that stick-to-itiveness for all folks engaged in this work? What does that look like to sustain it, to trust in the process, to be willing to shift and change to what things used to be better listeners and build those systems and structures into the work that we're doing, to talk about what wellness looks like for this particular team and not try to standardize when we talk about wellness, this is how we do
Yeah.
it. Like, no, what does this particular team need?
Yeah.
What does supporting them look like? So those were some of those real initial aha moments that are still, pervasive as the teams shift and change.
It is so particular to each group that and team you're working with. We would say we've worked with about 25 schools in DC on educator wellness, and it's 25 completely different approaches, right? Because it is really about that team. But I think one of the things that can be hard is, and you started to describe it, is like the managing up to some degree about things that people might not feel is in their locus of control, or that people might not feel is in their job description, but needs to be, right? When it comes to working with other adults. And one of those things I'll mention that I think gets a little sticky with this is that that we actually like really aren't set up systemically to think about teams and being shared responsibility. I mean, we have ways of evaluating teachers like individual value added that is like, how did this individual teacher increase this individual student's score from beginning of year to end of year, when in fact, like their reading score is influenced not just by the reading teacher, it's influenced by their social studies teacher and their science teacher and right the whole group, as well as of course everything happening outside of the school. So thinking about it as a village or thinking about it as a team is different than our systems treat it and not just how our mindsets treat it, right?
Exactly. You're spot on, Scott. Like one of our earlier barriers was kind of like that systems level leadership for something that was promoting the team itself. So we were really reinforcing shared responsibility across the team, and we were able to leverage flex scheduling and having students kind of get additional, more personalized learning from teams of teachers that address a specific need for that student. And so we were moving a few things around, and the challenge became, well, how can we capture grades? Because we have this system called Aspen, specifically for DC public schools, but every district has its own system where grades are captured because it's the one teacher, one classroom model.
Yeah.
Because the work that we're working on to redesign schools is more of like an our students model. It's a teams of teachers with those students. We found that it was hard to capture grades and make sure like attendance was clear. And when we tried to, push on some systems level leaders around changes that needed to be made in the structures and the resources that schools need, that became the barrier.
Yeah.
And again, oftentimes folks just kind of, retreat back to what has always, worked for them or the easiest way to address that. And it was like, all right, well, maybe we shouldn't do too much flex scheduling because the system is not ready for us to capture grades and attendance in a way that we need to do this work. And so we had to slow down the work. So you're exactly right. That's exactly how the work has felt piloting team-based models in DC.
So I know you've done a lot of team teaching and co-teaching. You've actually done a great segment over at Johnson Middle School, which is home for me. It's where I spent most of my time over at DCPS. I wish I was there or was able to participate when you came through, but so much of team teaching and co-teaching has various models and outlooks. So when you take a broad view of teaming and co-teaching practices in DC public schools specifically, what do you think would be better? What do you think we could do better to help achieve better outcomes? What do you think that the school level could do? And what do you think that the district level could do? I'll let you answer that part. And then I got a second follow-up question. I won't get you too much at one time. But what can each entity do, the school-based level and the district, to help improve co-teaching and teaming practices or outcomes?
Thanks for that, Dominique. And shout out to the previous Principal Coleman and AP Young. Those were two phenomenal leaders that I worked with when I supported Johnson. But you're right. I'm glad you named the school-based kind of role and then the systems level role, but just starting with the school-based role. First being just open to innovation, right? We've got to be open to disrupting the system. And so schools themselves have to feel empowered and be willing to take the risk to push on those systems. I was really grateful for the leadership at Johnson, and also shout out to the instructional soup, Harry Hughes, who really, pioneered this work and said, we've seen this model that ASU, Arizona State University, was kind of engaged with in their district. We wanted to kind of right size it and see what could this look like if we piloted that in DC PS. And so at the school level, we had to be ready to like buck the system a little bit, right? We had to be ready to take some risks. And what that meant was, let's look at what the needs are of the team. Like, what is the entry point to this work? Let's kind of do some more shared visioning. Like, all of that should be in the hands of the school. Like, I definitely think their soup helped them feel empowered about what this could look like. They were eager to make some changes and shifts to their schedules. They were really eager to start to integrate some of those resources. They were already using some AI tools, but it was a matter of how can we use this more effectively to meet the needs of our particular Johnson scholars. And so those decisions should be in the hands of the schools, right? Like, what tools do we need? What resources are we going to leverage? How does team-based model look like at our school? Because there's no one way to do team-based model, right? You mentioned co-teaching. Some schools actually did the co-teaching model. Some schools actually had counselors pushing in and instructional coaches. Shout out to Hart Middle School, Kramer Middle School, Tubman Elementary. Those are other schools that participated in the pilot who were willing to really customize what team-based models what look like for them. And so I definitely think that schools should have the autonomy and then the support, because when you give them autonomy, you can't just kind of back off and say, all right, let's kind of see how this plays out. But we need systems level leaders to lean in, right? When a school is elevating a need and willing to take on something that's innovative and different, we need systems level leaders to lean in. We need those supports to really continue and to be consistent. And those supports mean policy as well, right? I mentioned the Aspen example previously, but schools need to have more flexibility on what is the policy for grading? What does it look like if we want to have teams of educators supporting students to be able to customize their learning? Like, what does that look like? How can those policies, those systems, those structures, those tools be reimagined as well? So, I always say you can't, give schools a level of innovation, but not match it with the levels of support and the policy that kind of bolsters that work. And so we need our systems level leaders to lean in, to be a part of the conversations. We did some phenomenal work with communities of practice and had folks kind of share in the work, opportunities for systems level leaders to join those sessions, to hear what school-based leaders and educators were saying. That has to be ongoing, right? That should be normalized. It shouldn't be the nice to have, right? It shouldn't be the meeting that if you have time, come by, but it really should be prioritized and like built into the schedule. So I would say those are those key dynamics that have to play out for this work to actually be sustained.
Definitely. I think you went ahead and answered my follow-up question in totality. I think that we do need many leaders that are innovative and willing to buck the system, and there aren't a lot of that these days. So thank you for that.
When
Yeah.
thinking about the like dynamics, you just mentioned like team dynamics, and at the beginning you said like sometimes you talk about like the adult, the other adults in the building, and people give you a little side eye. I don't know about that person. I don't know about working together. And I mean, when we're in schools, we do get a lot of like, I mean, sometimes it is individual level, but often it is like a veteran teachers versus in some ways the new teachers, right, in the school, where it is just the setup of the school where people aren't set up to work together. They might meet with their grade level or they might meet with their content team, but there's people across the school who they just don't have any time built in that they work with. One of the things we've seen actually that we've preach a lot is like don't cancel the staff meeting or don't cancel right the times when you're together, because sometimes there's this dynamic where we're trying to give teachers time back, but we actually do is take away the only time that they're together across difference or across different groups in the school. And you have to find some ways for people to be together and kind of build that. And I think this like culture that you're talking about in teaming, it requires mutual respect. It requires a spirit of collaboration between teachers. So curious how you can support teachers who may, or schools who don't have those elements in place to kind of build the mutual respect and that collaboration.
Yeah, yeah. I think first and foremost, like building that culture where folks feel there's professional trust, there's mutual respect, does actually start being modeled by leadership, right? So if that has not been the case where folks have felt seen and heard by leadership in the space, it makes it much harder. So when you want to transform culture, I always say that starts with internal transformation, right? Like we're all leaders in the seats that we're in. We're all leaders of this work. It can't be the teacher to say, hey, it's the SPED educator's job to make sure that students are getting special education services that they need. No, like it's our job because they're our students. But if that hasn't been modeled to have inclusive leadership at the school, then folks don't feel like I have a voice at the table and I'll stay in my silo and kind of keep doing what I need to do. So I would say beginning to shift culture starts with like transformation around that at the top with leadership. And then it's also reinforced with the mindset work that needs to be embedded in all things school, right? We need to be talking about mindsets when we're meeting with families. We need to talk about mindsets when we're planning the academic calendar or changing the schedule or the athletic calendar, like addressing mindsets and our ways of being as we do this work has to transcend the ways of doing, right? And so I think people go in silos because we focus on the doing. Like, did you turn in your grades? Did you, teach your class, plan the lesson? And so mindset work has to be a part of what we do. We need to be talking about growth mindset on a consistent basis. We need to be showing that we prioritize the wellness of our staff. That looks like the systems and structures in place. That looks like our traditions. That looks like how we celebrate people. And so when you want to start transforming things, people have to actually look around and see the transformation happening. Because that helps them match that energy. Sorry, internally, Dominic. It helps them match that internally. But I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
Gotta feel it too. They gotta feel it.
Gotta feel it. They gotta feel it. It has to be more than lip service. We've heard words like growth mindset, right? We've heard words like give grace. But when I don't see that in the leaders in the space, when I don't even see myself as a leader, because I'm never at the table, then it's hard for me to match that energy. And
And
so,
that,
yeah,
that's with wellness too, right? Because people like say it as a word and like this is how we're gonna throw it in. And there are like times, we're brought in to do that, and it's like what we think is we're gonna outsource that now. Like, great, we've got like somebody who's gonna take care of the wellness piece, right? So I don't have to do that now. Like there's someone here to do that. And then from a system level, perspective, there's like the policy people who are like, oh, you're doing wellness. That means you're like going in and doing yoga classes and teaching
right.
people, right?
Yeah,
Like how to manage their stress, and that's part of it, right? That's part of it, but the piece is bigger than that. It really is mindset shifts, and that's the stuff that we need to get everybody in the same conversation around.
agreed, agreed. And I think when we do a better job of just uncovering, like, what are the needs in our space? Like, just break down the stakeholder groups. What do our parents need? What are they saying they need? Like, give them voice and autonomy to share. What are our students saying they need? The educators, what are the leaders? Once we are able to like have those difficult conversations where folks feel like they can share, then we can work together and co-create those solutions. And wellness, mindset, all those things should be embedded in the solutions. It's not the standalone, like you said, it's
Yeah.
not the throw it on the top. It's not the SEL opener only, it's not that. But I mean, oftentimes people start there. And so I say, like, let's at least get started. We don't need
Yeah.
to wait till the perfect mindset to like begin the work. Let's start and realize that this is forever work.
Yeah.
This is not work that we're only going to do for this year. This is mindset shifts are forever work because we're forever changing. So I'm so glad that you all have lifted that. Wellness is forever an ongoing process. It's continuous.
Definitely. I think that we've just kind of steamrolled right into this conversation. It has flowed so effortlessly, and we've had a lot of great topics. So rolling into this one, in your opinion, as we talk about teaming, co-teaching, and wellness, how does good teaming support educator wellness? And how can teachers working together build systems of support and wellness for both the team unit and students?
Yeah, yeah. I would say first and foremost, that shared responsibility. I talked a little earlier around like the village approach, but we're trying to move folks away from isolation. We know that mental health sometimes is actually intensified when folks feel alone, when they feel like there are no solutions, when they don't feel like they can think through or tackle a challenge. So that shared responsibility approach helps folks understand that, all right, I may not be on my best game today, or I may not be good at this one thing, but because I know I'm part of a team, I'm able to see that through modeling. I'm able to get feedback from a colleague that I'm building trust with. I'm able to share some of this workload because we're asking educators to do a lot now, right? We want you to be really good at your job to teach your content, but we also want you to really understand SEL and be able to address students' needs. We want to make sure that you're promoting a sense of belonging in your class, but also don't forget to like talk to the parents when you can, and like don't forget to turn your grades in. And I mean, the list goes on, right? And so when you have shared responsibility, that brings out roles and responsibilities that support the same cause, the shared goal. So I would say that would be one of the initial ways. And then to me, team-based model is really an efficacy boost, right? Folks are able to specialize in key areas that they do feel confident in. And I could like share with you, I'm really good at planning, blended learning experiences. And I want to be able to show you how to build your capacity in this area. So that's a great efficacy boost. And then it's also reciprocal. Like I get to learn from others. I'm really struggling on like aggressive monitoring and making sure that I'm having more meaningful checks for understanding. But now I get to observe this other teacher do this, flawlessly, and I'm able to learn from that and grow. So that supportive village for sure. We know it also retains educators. We know that people stay where they feel they're growing. People stay where they feel they're supported. And so I would say that retention factor also plays a role with really helping the team-based model make a larger impact on the school overall.
And going back to that, like, sorry, like peer-to-peer learning is like so important to that. Like one of the schools where we've seen some of the most growth in terms of like the educator wellness support, it has been implementation of like staff-led PD, peer-to-peer learning, which people might not, as now comes to mind when they say wellness, right? But that is what it looks like in practice for a lot of people is learning from their peers.
Definitely, definitely. Some of the work that I lead, I mentioned a lot of the consulting components with working with schools directly for school improvement, but I'm also launching a free global session. I know that Scott will also share some of this information at the end, but I'm really excited about this work coming up. Folks can register. You can click on that tiny URL and register. It's just been powerful work. This builds off of a conference that I did this summer in Ghana, West Africa, where I worked with ASCD and many leaders across the globe. And they all share many of the same similar challenges that we have here in the DMV. And so I was really excited to work with other leaders there and say, you know what, let's bring more of this together, shared solutions, like you mentioned, Dominique, elevating the needs. Like wellness is not just for our district, but like we're not all well until we feel like it's a global effort towards wellness. It's a global priority towards wellness for students and adults. So I encourage folks to register. It's a free opportunity to really build your capacity and learn alongside others, as you were just naming, Scott. But yes, this work is work that only can continue when we realize the power in each other.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think it's interesting how all of these different topics are compartmentalized in education, but in this conversation, I hope that the listeners understand and can highlight how all of these different topics work succinctly together in the school system at the school-based level. So as a co-teacher, I'm really excited about this conversation and where some of this work is going. And I hope that there are some school leaders that maybe can get to listen to the podcast and really understand the importance of building capacity with wellness and peer-to-peer learning, because those things are extremely important. So I hope that everybody can get some planning time together, because as teachers, we love that planning time, so that
Yeah.
some of these teams can build capacity. And in my experience, I've had some of my best success and best student growth when I've had those healthy co-teaching relationships and being able to build capacity, and knowing that Mr. Irvin is really good with whole group instruction and Ms. Moore is really good with small group and Miss Stokes is really good. Those are probably my top two co-teachers that I love working with. So those are the names that I was shouting out. But it really works and it really helps. So I just really hope that over the next year or two, as we start to talk about design and co-teaching, we can build some capacity, not only at the school level, but like you said, with policy.
Definitely.
And I
Definitely.
hope, you hit the nail on the head. I think so many people need to hear the conversation. I'm
Mm.
so glad we had this conversation, and I hoping people can press play on this podcast and listen to it in their PLC and then have a conversation about it, right? At your school with your team. And if your school wants to go in this direction, get in touch with Leslie, figure out how you can work together. Think about that global cohort wherever you are in the world, about thinking about how we design schools and how we make teaming and well-being support work for everybody. So Leslie, so great to have you on here. Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing in DC and around the world.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Pleasure connecting with you all. I look forward to folks tuning in. Let's do this work together.
Yes,
Let's do it.
yes, yes.
Here, bye.
Thank you.